Good afternoon. Hello again. I hope you've all had a restful coffee break. A few logistical issues before we begin with the session. You'll see when you walked outside that we have an Amex table. So if any of you need any assistance with your travel, the Amex table will be available from 11 to 4 every day. So you can ask them any questions you have about your travel. And if you also have a lot of energy left by the end of the day and you want to tour Cairo, they can also assist you with that. You will also see that we have a business center right across. If you want assistance with your internet, with printing, etc., they can assist you with that. And you will see we have 2 exhibits. We have a knowledge exhibition that is at the end of the corridor, and I'm very happy to say that most of our stuff has already been picked up by you all, which is good news. So we will replenish the material tomorrow. We also have an HIV gallery. These are products that have been generated by people living with HIV through income-generating products organized by non-governmental organizations in 7 Arab countries. And we have here 1 Arab country that's represented by them. This is a project that UNDP Regional Office is working on to ensure that people living with HIV actually live with social dignity and economic dignity. So with that, let me welcome session 2, Social Accountability on the Role of the State. We have several very exciting speakers. I will introduce all the speakers and give you a quick idea as to how this session will be run before I hand it over to our esteemed colleagues. Our first speaker will be Dr. Azmi Shuaibi, coming from Palestine. He is the coordinator of the Regional Anti-Corruption and Integrity Network, which is a non-governmental group. Our second speaker will be His Excellency Jamaluddin Gharbi, Minister of Regional Development and Planning from Tunis. Our third speaker is His Excellency Hassabou Mohammed, Minister of Decentralized Governance in the Higher Council for Decentralization in Sudan. And hopefully, our fourth speaker will be Dr. Ghada Wali, who is a Managing Director of the Social Fund for Development here in Egypt. She has just been called away for an urgent meeting with the Prime Minister. Our speakers will have half an hour in total for their presentations, and then Dr. Azmi will lead a half an hour of moderated discussion. So with that, the floor is yours, gentlemen.
شكرا. بسبب انه الاخت
because Ms. Ghada Wali, the Secretary General of the Egyptian Fund for Development, she has an appointment with the Prime Minister. So on behalf of her, I will chair this session and administer this dialogue. And as said this morning, the 2 consecutive sessions, this first one will speak about social accountability, is focused on discussing what is demanded from the state in order to transform this process into an effective one that would yield to effective results. The next session, the second session, will speak about the role of NGOs in guaranteeing the existence of effective and productive and positive social accountability. Those 2 sessions, beside the previous opening session, as well, there will not be open discussion with the audience. Otherwise, the discussions will be referred to the end of the day and the general session allocated for the media. So we will divide the work into 2 parts. The first part, and in order to be fair with the speakers, we will give 10 minutes for each intervention. Then we will head the main questions in the second 30 minutes. Of course, we are speaking about the state of transition in the Arab region and in the context of this transformation, which is taking place since more than a year and a half. The social dialogue has been focused on redrafting the social contract between the state and the citizens. This is the main track for the discussions taking place in the Arab world nowadays. Some countries have gone through phases and they have held elections, some countries. like Egypt have introduced, some countries like Egypt introduced elections, some had an interim formula like Tunisia, and other countries are in the initial phases like Libya. Yemen is still in an ambiguous transformation and the results are not clear up till now. And Syria is heading towards violence. But besides the differences and the specificities of the transformation process in each and every country, nevertheless there is a common factor. It is clear now that the Arab citizens, as citizens, and whom in the latest years and the latest decades have been excluded from the ruling game and power in the Arab region, has settled through elites formed from specific groups, either from the parties or from the junta or the military or from the private sector or from the ruling families, regardless of the nature of the ruling, whether it's a democratic or republican or royalty or whatever. This elite, this limited elite, has grasped the power and has grasped all the limbs of the state, whereas the citizens' main interest was to find solutions for their private lives, and they set themselves aside from being interested in the public domain. This, as we know, has led to misdistribution of resources and has led to aggravating poverty and unemployment and corruption and all these adverse effects which accompanied the nature of the ruling regimes in the Arab world in general. We're also respecting the differences between each and every country. What happened is that the citizens, and because of these huge pressures, have moved on a grassroots level, those sometimes called revolutions, sometimes called demonstrations. They have many nominations, but the essence of all these activities is that the citizens have decided to break the vicious circle of the state's control by the elite, and hence they decided to collectively and urgently to head towards calling for redrafting the social contract, given that they are the main and the basic stakeholders, and they are the real expression of the statement that the people are the source of the powers. In respect and the framework of this topic, the NGOs, the Arab NGOs, are weak and are only embryonic in nature. Some of them suffer from many dilemmas related to class-based factions and the opposition nature of them. Some organizations are controlled by the elites or by the ruling parties themselves. We will discuss this in the second session, the role of the NGOs. But what is more important is that the state institutions, which accepted the notion of change up till now in all of these countries, still deal with the subject in a way that they hold the strings of the political game. And up till now there is a huge number of the citizens mobilize themselves on a mass level, and there are the elite, the political parties are deliberating between among them, and there is a huge gap between both of these parties, and this gap is not interested in the redistribution of the cake or in what form the constitution will be, or the election of a new president or a new party. And they didn't take into consideration that this huge gap between the vast grassroots mobilization and the ruling tools and the states on the other hand, and hence the reorganization of these huge numbers of masses and the NGOs and the state is paramount, because every action and all the issues present need a long time and need participation and need effort and need arrangement of priorities. This complex process in the transformation period which the Arab regimes undergone, no single party can claim that they can face individually, and hence the interest of the parties today who need to seek to come to power, they have interest in redistribution the tasks from one hand and opening as far as possible to the throngs and the masses in general, which nobody can deal with them unless they facilitate providing their interests through the state bodies. The state has an interest in organizing this relation and opening the way and paving the way for reintroducing citizens in the public life and the political life through NGOs based on sound basis, and heading towards building a civil and democratic state. Today there is something common for all. Everybody agrees that we are heading towards a democratic and civilian state, and part of the civilian state is the NGOs, which are responsible and transparent and including accountability measures. All these details are important, but the concept is that there is a real interest in the integration process between the role of the state institutions and the role of NGOs. This entails a huge change, not only through the notion that the state will respect NGOs or will provide for their interests. No, this needs a structural change sometimes. It may also entail changing the legislations which in the past didn't permit for opening the state institutions to society, and they didn't enable facilitation of building the NGOs and institutionalizing them. In the past 2 years we administered an Arab study about the right of assembly and the right of launching NGOs, whether charities or interest groups or human rights groups or even trade unions, because the concept of NGOs is much wider than being restricted on just the NGOs and selective NGOs. But in the vast definition of the term we found in the old Arab legislations, maybe with the exception of Lebanon, and regardless of the circumstances which led to providing the right of assembly and the right of association, which is guaranteed through only which is guaranteed by announcement of launching the institution. All the countries require the previous government supervision, and also in the majority of the countries this previous supervision is security in nature. Besides the right of assembly and organization, by virtue of this right, no meetings can be held without an authorization, and there is huge censorship on the freedom of expression. And so we need to review all the old legislations in regards to the view of the state to the NGOs. The second point is to review the mechanisms of the government action which doesn't enable participation, because participation cannot be done by inviting them to seminars or workshops. It can be affected by real participation, and should be based on a methodology and a mechanism of what is known as the national plans. National plans and not government plans. National plans meaning that it includes all the stakeholders. They are all partners in the preparation and the implementation and monitoring of the plan, and openness to information. All these details should be reviewed from the government part. So the two concepts, the two principles, the participation of NGOs in bearing the tasks laid upon the Arab region and setting the priorities, and specifically when we speak about the limited resources, like we see today in Egypt. Egypt is facing a huge challenge how to distribute such limited resources by partners that each of them feels unjust, and hence they feel that they are oppressed by the state because they do not know or have the real figures of the resources or the fair distribution of them. All the speeches about the development in the Arab world which reflected the development in the individual income, it's viewed from the other hand by citizens that it is unjust and the unemployment is increasing and poverty is increasing because the distribution of the resources is unfair and excludes the citizens' partnership. So we should provide the opportunity for accountability before the civil society organizations, and also enabling NGOs, civil society organizations, to open and to strengthen their structures and to receive funds and financing and to be partners in the resources and have the right to access resources. The second principle, in order to give them a role in accountability, we should open with complete transparency in receiving and access of information. Those are the two issues. The participation issue, which needs enabling and empowerment and availability of information, and the second is the issue of the role of the civil society organization in accountability, which entails transparency and a huge change in the mechanism and the system of the relation between the government organizations and the civil sector. We not only need the change in the concepts and legislations, but we need also changing the persons and the individuals themselves, because the mentality of some individuals are very backward and they regard the civil society organizations that they have some agendas, some foreign agendas, and many governments may find it necessary to change the persons, not just introducing the new concept of the relation between the state and the NGOs. I am striking a simple example in Palestine. One positive form of the civil society organization is forming a coalition called the National Coalition for the Transparency of the Budget, in order to build their capacity, in order to know how to participate in identifying and the budget and monitoring such. So positively, the government prepared the so-called the budget of the citizen, and it's a simple citizen. It's very clear, understood by the civil society organizations and NGOs and the citizens. This is an initiative by the government to prepare the budget of the citizens, and the NGOs launched an establishment, a network of the national organizations participating in the preparation of this budget. Those are two positive initiatives which paved the way for the two parties to cooperate together and to understand what are the priorities and what are the challenges facing the government. This is a brief of the approach, and after this we will listen to their experience. We will listen to two experiences. One is from Tunisia in the transitional phase, and Dr. Gamal Eddin Gharbi, President of the Regional Development and Planning, will give us a model of the regional governance and the challenges they face on the level of the local municipalities or the local councils. Also, we have a second experience from Sudan, will be presented by Mr. Hassan Bou Muhammad, the Minister of the Higher Council for Higher Ministry for Central Government, affiliated from the central government in Sudan. And this may be an opportunity when we speak about a government for an Islamic political party which is taking over in Tunisia, Al-Nahda party, the Renaissance party, so to speak, who are feeling for the way and the methods they will present instead of the old ones, which will provide for the interests of the people. And an example from the ruling, an Islamic ruling in Sudan, or a political party leaning towards Islamic Sharia. And given that one of the forms of transformation in the Arab world is the rise of the political Islamization, so this would be an opportunity to first know the change that is intended for these new parties and what are the experience and the models developed by these parties. We will start with Mr. Hassan Bou Muhammad to present his experience. Please proceed to the floor.